Try and keep it as simple as possible. Right, what have we got today? I made this on Midjourney, and I found a new interesting way to make pictures that I'm putting in a photograph that I've taken or I've got to use, and then putting in one of my oil paintings as a style, and then it brings up a reference, and I can put keywords in to say golden sunlight and all that sort of stuff. So this is based on Gwithian Beach in Cornwall, where I grew up, and it evokes those feelings for me when I look at it. So it's a good start. When you want to paint something, you've got to be inspired to paint it, I think, because if you're just painting it for the painting's sake, you know, it probably will show in the painting. So I've got a good selection of brushes ready to go. No particular reason why I've picked these. I've got some filberts, flats from about size 2 to size 6. Possibly could do with some bigger ones really, but these will be fine. I think I'll go for painting the sky last, and the reason for that is I'll use the sky to cut around these rocks to give me some sharp edges on here. And the sky won't take very long to paint, I don't think. So we'll start with the main feature, which is this rock here with the nice bit of sunlight on it. And I've got a little bit of Gamsol in here, which I'm going to have a go at just sort of thinning down a little bit of paint to put on there. I don't normally do that, but what I want to perhaps do, I'll just use a bit of burnt sienna there. But what I'm going to do is just squint my eyes and just paint everything I see that's in that light brown colour, and just try and make it abstract, even do the reflections as well, and just paint that as one shape. But still want to try and get this painting done in about an hour, you know, not because I'm trying to rush through and get it done quickly and then go off and have my dinner, because it will encourage a little bit of spontaneity and hopefully make it nice and loose. That I've done similar demos where I've drawn every little nook and cranny and then just put the right colour, the right shape in place, almost a bit like paint by numbers, and you do get a very good photographic looking image. But I think this can be a little bit more spontaneous doing it this way. And by thinning it down with a bit of Gamsol, this will gas off, or whatever it's called, fairly quickly, and I'll be able to layer over the top of that quite comfortably. So if I squint, that's kind of the shape I see. Possibly comes down there a bit. And there's a bit of light hitting that rock over there. And then I'll take another brush and do the same for over here, which if I've got some phthalo blue, so normal colours, titanium white, primary yellow, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue. I put burnt sienna. It's just a convenience because you can make burnt sienna from these colours. But I've got some violet rouge and phthalo blue, which will give me quite a sort of a powerful colour, which will hopefully be quite cool, which I thought might be quite good to put on there. So let's go for purple. And sometimes I would do this in watercolour, but if I'm going to come over this later with a different colour, you can sometimes put in a colour which will shine through, and it can give some quite nice effects. So, but again, just looking at the overall shape. And again, like I say, with things like rocks and so on, you don't have to be 100% accurate. So this is all very thin at the moment, and some of that may well be shining through at the end, possibly. And put the sand area down here as well. So I've just added a bit of that violet rouge into that mix there. Perhaps a little bit of ultramarine blue just to grade off, bit of alizarin crimson, bit of yellow. Just keep adding whatever you need to add to it to get it to the colour you need to go. So it's just a And I'm just going to thin it down a little bit and just get it covered. So got some of that cooler colours over this side where it's in shade over here. So already the shapes are there, so that's okay. I'll pay more attention, I think maybe that rock could come over slightly. We'll try it as that for the moment. So another clean bit of tissue. Bit of background noise coming through there. I shall just mute that. There we go. So start refining. So we need to make this more three-dimensional. This is the sort of the focal point. So if I use a little bit of ultramarine blue and a bit of burnt sienna, that will give me a dark. So with the rocks, I think I said it before, that if you just think about it as a box, we've obviously got the light coming in from this way because the light is on this side and we've got shadows on that side. So again, just taking inspiration from what I can see here with just these darks. And just keep adding bits to it, keep adding and building it up. I'll add some more burnt sienna, a bit of red to warm that up. As it comes around the side here, it starts to receive a little bit more light. And I always get to this sort of thing and you start worrying, oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing? But you just got to stick with it. And as long as you are trying to put in the right colours and tonal values in the right place, we should be good. So we'll have a little break from that and I'll paint the distant cliffs in there, which I'll need to be a little bit more, should we say, careful on getting the right colour and the shape now, because I don't really want to be coming back to this. Really, this area, the painting can just be done and finished. Now, it's not hugely important, so I can match that colour pretty much perfectly there. And treat it like a flat shape. Let's just lighten it ever so slightly. So that tells me that the tonal value is wrong here, that I'll need to go darker with that because I've checked this tonal value of the distant landmass there, but that's darker than here. So if it doesn't look the same here than it does here, one of your tonal values is wrong. And don't just assume the one you've just mixed is wrong, because if you've checked it and it's correct, that one's wrong, which is fine because it's not finished that bit yet. So there's the cliff tops there, and it goes darker. So I've just got some dark mix in there. Lighter. And with stuff like this off in the distance, the less detail you put on there, the better. Simply as that. It's fine. And another brush on the go. Put the seascape in there, the sea, which a bit of ultramarine blue, a bit of yellow to make a green. a good starting point. So it's way too green and way too dark. So we'll just lighten it first. So it's too green, so a bit of burnt sienna. We'll desaturate that. Still needs desaturating. Pick up a bit of that blue as well because it needs steering towards blue. Getting closer. And it's funny, when you take the colour away from where it is on here, it looks nothing like what's there, but you know, I've checked it, it's correct. So we've just got a band of that green going across there. That's fine. And then what colour have we got here? It looks like a very light pink, but very greyed. So again, much lighter in value. More towards blue, got some blue there. So I can start to just cut around that rock there because we want sharp edges around there. And just a bit of a white. That wave going across there. I'll probably come back to that. Maybe even use the palette knife to put some detail on there. Make sure we get that horizontal. Back to a bigger brush. Don't really want to be using brushes that are too small. So while we've perhaps mixed that colour, let's use a bigger brush. Again, just do a little test. You can even put it on the laminated photo. This is just a glossy photo, so it's too light in value. And it needs to be more towards blue. I'll just mix this little lot in there, which will desaturate it. Too blue, needs to be more red. So I've got some stuff here, use that. If you're enjoying the video, please do hit that like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And if you've been watching me for a while, you might be interested in joining me on my website membership. And on tier 2 currently, to celebrate a couple of milestones we'll be hitting soon on both my channels. Hopefully hitting 15,000 subscribers on my oil channel and 30,000 subscribers on my watercolour channel. Hoping to get to 100,000 subscribers on each of these channels. So if you can help me by liking and subscribing, that'd be much appreciated. But as a thank you for all your support, there's a 30% off annual memberships. So you might want to take advantage of that. It's a limited time offer. So don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. Enjoy the video, and I shall see you on the memberships, hopefully on a live stream. So that's all covered there now. And got a little bit of sand visible off in the distance there. Get that put in then, and then we've covered the canvas along the bottom. Now we can sort of go back and start putting a bit of detail on these rocks. So let's go for a smaller brush. So compositionally wise, I think actually that size of the rock looks okay, so we'll stay with that. So I'll mix this lighter value here, which looks yellow, touch of burnt sienna, bit of white. Pretty good. And it won't be until we put the sky next to that that will look bright, because it's being compared to the white of that board at the moment. and then it goes slightly more towards brown. Checks. With the red, I only add a little bit at a time because it does change it dramatically, the colour. And there's so many little shapes and so on here that I'm not trying to replicate everyone, just taking inspiration from it, and just as long as it looks like a rock, that's all I'm after. So some of this yellow or this stain I put on here will come through. Keep a separate brush for my dark mixes. Got a slightly smoother brush. I've been using hog brushes, but that's a little bit smoother. So that'll give me a sort of flat, less brush marky look to it, which will flatten it off. So just mixing a dark, possibly steering it towards blue. So using a bit of that phthalo. Be careful with phthalo because it's really powerful. So with a softer haired brush, this is a Evergreen Filbert, a Rosemary & Co one. I'll get a smoother, flatter finish there, which will make that look more like the shadow part of that rock. So it's the strong shadows on this that are important. And keep that fairly flat. Yeah. Yeah, it's really, I suppose, down to every individual person, because for me, I can kind of almost see the painting. If you can't see the painting and if you feel you need to have that sky to progress, put it in. For me, that I'll work on this area, which is all quite complex here. There are lots of little bits and bobs and so on. So when I get fed up with that and find myself probably start to make mistakes, I'll think, right, I can have a rest, do the sky. The sky's going to be nice and easy. It's just a blocking in of the shape there. Also, I suppose because I'm actually using a reference picture that looks nice, and I'm quite happy if my painting looks like that, so I'm not necessarily injecting a lot in the way of artistic license, that if I was perhaps using a reference picture that didn't have all the necessary things that I wanted for a painting, such as the right color harmony, the right contrast in the right areas, and I think, well, I might have to make some changes. You might need to put the sky in to see how it affects and so on. But I think it all depends on yourself, where, your painting style, the reference picture, and the subject matter, really. But for me, I can see that the painting will rely on it having a real sharp edge around this rock to draw the eye to here because of the sharp edge, and same here, that it kind of directs your eye here. So by painting the sky afterwards, I can really come in and I'm not worried about the shapes of the rocks here really so much, because I'll use the sky to cut in and create these abstract shapes. Hopefully that answers that question. And hello, Heidi. Nice to see you again, or hear you again. So, so I quite like this part on the painting here, where this part of the rocks are in shadow. Obviously, it's the same as these rocks. They're all this color, but obviously these are in sunlight and this one's not. And I think that's what is one of the big things that appeal to me in paintings, is the effects of sunlight, and probably for a lot of artists, that what's happening when the sun is hitting things and creating these wonderful effects. So, but it can be quite tricky to see these colors and what's actually going on. So that's where doing this actual color checking really pays off. And I think that's what I struggle with outdoors painting, is seeing those colors that, particularly as the sun is going down, all sorts of things happen, and you know, it's difficult to judge it. So we've got a sharp edge here. So I've really loaded that brush up with a lot of paint, and that part of the painting is finished now. I'm quite happy with that. So if I just run that brush over there, we're going to get a sharp edge here. And I don't want it to be too perfect, so we'll just vary the mark slightly. And once we get to this stage, it's all sort of covered. These marks I'm putting on now, they want to be the final marks, really. That otherwise it doesn't look fresh and have that nice painterly look. So this can all be quite soft here, because, and by soft I mean not lots of detail. You know, we've got a sharp edge here, but this is all a little bit lost over here, painting one shape into the next shape, and that will create that feel that it's in shadow. Put some of that in there as well. Make that a little bit more abstract. So we'll have a rest from that area. Work over here. Again, just do a little test. It's the same there. And I'll try and leave some of that blue to come through. And, you know, some people say, you know, you paint dark to light. You know, I'm going to put the darker bits on afterwards. You know, it doesn't really matter. I've got this paint on the brush ready to go. So all I'm doing is putting this color tone in the right place. There, and there's another bit there, and then there's a shape here. And it's slightly darker. And then I'll use another brush, because to get this real dark, there's probably a little bit of white paint in on this brush, which would be difficult to get a real dark. So I'll just start with a brush that's fairly clean. And if I just mix some blue and just check I'm still in camera view, let me just wipe this palette off a little bit, just to keep in camera view. So I've got quite a big piece of glass here, so I would have room ordinarily, but to stay in view. So this is a Rosemary & Co. Ivory Long Flat, which is a synthetic brush, which will leave a smoother mark. These bristle brushes, as I've got various makes, that is another Rosemary & Co. one, Bravara. That's a bristle brush, which leaves a more abstract mark, the bristle brushes, which is why I tend to use those, which leaves all these lovely marks here. But so a dark, just mix all my primary colours together. Need quite a bit of paint. So the phthalo blue will steer towards green quite a bit, so you've got to be careful. Ultramarine blue. A big pile of dark paint there. It looks a little bit on the green side, so a bit of red. So again, nicely loaded up brush. Make a decision. Some dark paint there. So we're going to have the reflection there in a moment. So this is all abstract. So probably a good idea to put the sky in a moment, I think. And have a break from this little lot. We've got dark in there. And I'll probably go back to a bristle brush. So I do much prefer the bristle brushes how they behave. But as soon as you've picked up a bit of that other paint that was on there, the white, it's starting to milk this dark up. So now I shall leave that brush to one side. So let's have a go with this sky. Probably a good idea to finish this rock here before I do, because I don't want to be fiddling with that rock afterwards. So let's do that. So we've got this flat shape on the top there. Red, brown. Just do a little test. It's slightly more yellow. And darker. And you know, I need to make this darker. Just use some of this. It's just a slight dark green. And if it goes too green, steer it back towards red. But it's made it darker, and that's perfect. So using a much smaller brush, if I can zoom in a little bit. And there's just lots of little indentations on this rock, which I can just randomly put these marks on. And if I put a mark here in the yellow part, it'll have more effect because we've got stronger contrast. And this rock needs to look good, because if I get this rock looking good, realistic, shall I say, the other rocks will be painted by the viewer's eye. And slightly more red. And of course, to us up close here, it's not going to look like a rock. It's just going to look like a right mess. Start to put some thick paint on. Red just wraps itself around that rock there quite a bit. And you need the darks to make things look light. So we've got dark there, which is a rock not receiving a lot of light, and then there. But so that it's not just all black. There's oranges and warm browns and so on. And you just got to just keep checking tonal values. Get some of that light in there. Again, I'll take a clean brush, some yellow, red, white, and with these little highlights, I don't want to be messing about with them too much, because we'll lose the darks if we start messing about with the light areas on the rock. And so with these bristle brushes, you know, if you just touch it, it leaves an abstract mark. Right, it's looking okay, so I'll leave it at that rock, because it doesn't take a lot to lose it. So, come back to that little lot. So let's put the sky in. So if we zoom out, hopefully that will start to look like a bit of a rock. So, got to fairly big brush here. I've got some other bigger brushes, but that probably will do. So what colour is that? It looks purple. So we'll start with ultramarine blue and red. Obviously way too dark. So a nice big dollop of white. So if I squint my eyes, it's too dark in tone and it's too blue. So get the colour right, add a bit of red into there. And rather than try and mix all of this into, I'll have to add quite a lot of white. Let's just put that to one side for later. We'll use it elsewhere. And just use the paint that's on the brush. So getting closer to the tonal value, but it's still a little bit oversaturated in the blue. So a bit of ultramarine, a bit of burnt sienna, should I say. We're getting closer. It still needs to be a bit more red. So just too dark now. So white. And the brush is nicely loaded up. So that's pretty much perfect once you can't see the paint. So I'll start with this rock. So I've got a nicely loaded up brush. So if I just paint into that rock, I can create some abstract shapes. And I can sort the shape of that out a little bit. And if I twist the brush as I do it, you're getting clean or the fresh paint on the brush. Just probably need to work a bit more on this rock here possibly, but we'll see, because it's sometimes, like I say, it's hard to tell until you get the sky in. So the sky changes here, that it's not all just this color, but it's a good starting point. And maybe here we'll want a soft edge, but I can just manipulate that a little bit afterwards. So it gets lighter in value, so we can just check down here that it's fairly, it's gone a little bit on the dark side, but let's just put some of that into there. That's going to just change that value a little bit, and it warms up a little bit as it goes up towards the sky there. Much warmer. Much too dark in tone. It's more red over that side. And I'll go in with another brush with some blue, which we'll try the ultramarine blue and white. That was just a bit of ultramarine blue and white to get that sky colour at the top there. Just paint that up to there. And I'll smooth all this sky off, I think, which will send it back. Careful not to pull too much of that up into the sky. So it's looking a little bit grey and overcast now. Let's take a soft brush here. How that will work, but soften all that off. This is just a household brush, that is. So as a starting point, we can always adjust that sky as and when we need to. I think it'll be a case of putting some light in the sky and getting the value right. I can always just lift a little bit of paint out as well. So when I put the lighter values on the top there, it won't let's come back to that. Not over yet. So a little bit on the blue side here. So could do with sharpening up these edges a little bit. So let's mix some of that purple mix. And it's easy at this stage, you know, we've got everything covered. It's kind of there, but it's not necessarily this. It's not right. That you know, you can easily get lost. But all you've got to do is just go back to the basics of, you know, what do you need to do. I need to put the right color and the right tone in the right place. And it needs the contrast of the light and the dark and the sharp edges all in the right place. So you can see there, by painting the rock now into the sky, it's not as easy to get a hard edge there because you drag that white paint into the rock. But it's fine. But it's important probably to not touch that because it will lose that freshness. Right, let's just get rid of some of that blue that's coming through there. Okay, so what have we got here? So we've got a shadow or a reflection there. And sometimes it's just a case of putting these last details in, really, and it'll just bring it all together, hopefully. Bit of sand there. So phthalo blue, I would be careful with that. That it just dominates anything you put it into. So your ultramarine blue is a safer bet. So we've got this reflection here on this rock here, which is quite an important part of the painting because it's what makes this look like water. Putting that reflection in there. And with reflections, again, it's just a case of just putting the right tonal value and the right color in place. Just check. lighter. Again, over here we've got that wet sand. And if the tonal value isn't right on the sand area here, which is why it's not reading well as a painting, so all we've got to do is make it the right tonal value. So obviously I just blocked it in very quickly. So we've got a light mix here. It's a good starting point. That's pretty much it actually. Not enough. Too yellow. Needs to be more red. Too red. Needs to be more blue, but I wouldn't use phthalo blue. I think I actually contaminated my ultramarine blue here with the phthalo, so learn from my mistakes there. Just be careful with phthalo blue, but we got there. It's just lighter in value. And make that all quite loose. And back to a smaller bristle brush, which just a dark mix there, but not as dark as that. So some footprints in the sand. And then good idea to just have a little step back from it. Another clean brush. Work on the water in between the rocks. So it looks blue. So we'll start with zoom this camera out a little bit as far as it comes out. Some white paint. Needs to go more towards blue, or using the other end of the pile there, so I actually get some ultramarine blue, not phthalo blue. Too blue and too saturated, so burnt sienna. And I find out to mix these colours, you end up doing all the same things all the time, so it all becomes, you know, second nature. And if I wasn't doing demo, I wouldn't obviously be calling it out as I'm doing it. I would just do it without even thinking about it, and you know, you can get pretty much exactly the right colour. So this needs to be fairly smooth. And you know, as a beginner, my instinct probably would have been to paint this probably either blue or white, but it's just grey. Obviously the reference picture is made up, so it isn't necessarily true to life, but it looks fairly realistic. Soft edge in there, and harder edge that's in there. And the reflections, again, we just check the color, and I find I get to this point where I get the whole thing covered, it's looking okay, and then I'll just paint quickly and put things in, little bits of detail, and aim to finish it fairly quickly. without start overthinking it and overworking it. So we've got the rock here, which is giving us those reflections, slightly more towards red, and also just looking at what's going on above. Slightly darker, which got a dark mix there. Obviously, whatever's going on above influences what's going on down here. It's too purple, add a bit of yellow. It's too green, go back with a bit of a red or purple. So it's quite. I've got a couple of monitors on the go. I've got the one here which has got the Zoom, the Google Meet, and then I've got my laptop here, which is just a picture of the painting. And when I sort of glance at it on the other screen, it's almost, I suppose, if someone else was seeing my painting, and it looks actually okay there. You know, here it looks awful, but you know, and I suppose you can also, if you take a little photograph on your phone and then look at it as a smaller picture, you get to see it slightly differently. So we've got no darks in here, where I can see obviously darks in there. So at this stage, it's a case of looking at what's different. You know, it looks like that scene to a certain degree, but you know, where are the differences that, like I say, obviously it sticks out to me there that there's no darks. So let's put them in. And they're just all if I squint my eyes, I can see 4 blobs of dark. So there's one there. I've already got that one in there. There's another one there. And when you're putting in darks where there's white paint, you know, this is not where you want to be messing about, having several attempts at it. You just make your decision, put it in. If you've not done it perfect, you don't really want to be messing about with it. It's there. Let's go back to a bristle brush, get the right sort of marks. Again, if I squint my eyes, I've lost my dark there. Got a bit of blue there that doesn't really make sense. And then get to the point, does it look like a rock? Well, yeah, so leave it. Why keep messing with it? So again, looking at differences, I haven't got the darks in here that are in the reference there. It's not too bad here. Really thick paint now. And the times I say, you know, color doesn't matter. You know, this isn't necessarily the right color there, but it's dark, and you know, a really dark blue and a really dark green. There's probably not huge amounts of differences there. It's just a dark value. Again, ask yourself, do they look like rocks? Yes, that's fine. Is my dark enough there in comparison to that? Looks possibly not. Let's add a bit of red into there because it looks warmer. And look at edges. If I put a sharp edge in there, that looks good on the reference there, so let's do it there. And you start to see a few little darks even on the rock there. It's less, should we say, you know, that looks kind of black dark, but it's more brown dark here rather than, you know, so just look at there's more warmth in it. So just be careful, we don't just start putting black paint everywhere because it will just look awful. So get that warmth right. It just gets to the point, I think, where you know you just have to say yourself, you know, am I actually going to make this any better? And then that's the point to stop when you know, you've got to make the decision. I think, you know, you never really finish the painting, you just abandon it. That's as good as I'm going to get it really, without then start overworking it. And that's looking okay. Got something's not quite right here. That so I'll just check my tonal values. So perhaps I just need to go a little bit lighter. Just to push that back a little bit. I think possibly to do with lightening the sky a little bit. Let's just take off a little bit of that paint. So lighter, and just see what colour. Slightly more red maybe. Okay. Going lighter, we'll be increasing the contrast slightly. And more variation, I think, in the sky. So I'll leave some of that, the darker tone underneath, and just careful not to disturb that rock. It definitely looks warmer there. I think I probably didn't check my tonal values enough in the sky, but let's get this sky sorted. So touch of yellow and the white. So this painting is not necessarily about the sky, it's more about this area. And if I adjust the sky too much, it'll affect the reflections. So I'll just bear that in mind. More yellow. Red. I think probably need to put some of that in this water here. Lost the C there, so I need to put that back. So I thought maybe just try and use a palette knife to put the C in. I'll give that a go. So a little bit of just wipe some of this. So the mistake would be to just use white. It'll have a bit of green in there, which I've got a little bit there on the palette. Just to take away some of that white. Just hold your palette up to the colour. You can see. So a nicely loaded up brush. Got to be careful I don't go too high because I'll need to move that up as well. So if I come across from here, I'm not an expert using palette knife. Just lay it on. We can zoom in. Kind of scoop the paint up onto the palette knife so it's on the end of it, and then let it leave the palette knife, and know that that's going to take weeks for it to dry. So any more than that isn't necessary. I don't think. That again, we step back from it. Does it look like the sea? Again, at this stage, a case of looking at what's different. That I think I can see that my reflection needs to come down a little bit further, possibly, not a lot. Just down to about there. We're an hour into it. That I tend to find an hour is enough, and then come back to it with fresh eyes a day or two later. Well, I never really come back to my paintings. It's once it's done, once I finish, that's it. Which is why it's probably a good idea to I try to finish them. So just a little flick of a highlight here, but if we put it next to a dark area, it'll stand out more. And some light areas on those rocks. I think the challenge is not to just to make all the rocks the same. I do that by just change the direction of the brush and pull it up, put it down. Water's edge, that needs to just come over this way a little bit. Again, by putting light against dark, zoom out. By putting light against dark here, we're increasing the contrast and create that illusion of that being water. Put in that rock here, it just breaks up this area a little bit. And then I think I'll probably call that done, I think. Again, we're putting dark against light, which always looks good. A couple of rocks. Some dark paint there. Just take a clean brush. Just pull that down for the reflections. I know when you mess about with shapes, you know, you lose the dark, so you just got to go back in, put it in. Sometimes it's really difficult to get the dark if you've got white paint on this. You just have to just lay it on top. Paint that up into there, break that up a little bit, and then I start to see that pink on here as well. That's where the light is coming around. Right, I think I'll leave it there because I'm fiddling now. So when you feel yourself fiddling with it, it's time to stop and they take away the reference picture, so you can't look at it because you could just keep finding stuff otherwise. Step back from it. And probably take your glasses off as well. It always looks better then as well. All goes a bit blurry. So it's worked okay, but I kind of feel if I keep going, I will just spoil the freshness of it. That got some of that blue coming through there, which I quite like. That works well with the orange. And it's, you know, it could be a painting that I could work on again, possibly. That because I've lost perhaps some of the darks. That but as I found there, the more I try to put on the dark, it's just going creamy and milky. You better just let it dry, and then on another pass, put those darks in on a dry panel, and then you'll be able to get the darks in and just make just a few adjustments, and it may well only be just a few minutes of painting to get it to a finished point, but it's all there, and put it in a frame, it'd probably be fine. But I've actually got a frame here, I think. So lots of just random marks. Up close, it's so difficult to see it as a painting. So the palette knife works quite well for those waves, but the painting works on the warm and cool colors, and the edges. It's down to the different edges. We've got hard, soft edges. It's, certainly if I step back to the other side of the room, it looks, you can't see any of those silly little marks. That it becomes then a finished piece. So there we go. So I say you go through that stage. I was quite worried where it was looking, at the very beginning. I think, oh, if I, bitten off more I can chew here. It's getting a bit out of control or whatever. But you just stick with it, stick with that plan. If you put the right color, the right tone, in the right place, it will come good. Simone has raised a hand. That's what I do there. Click there. Yep, and that was happening to me around this area. And I put those rocks in there, and I think it's just because there's so much paint on here now that if I want to try and make that dark, I could do it by just wiping it off and doing it. But you're an hour into the painting, it's probably time to have a break from it, step away from it. This would still be wet in tomorrow, so I could modify things wet into wet still tomorrow. But yeah, that's why I aim to start when I paint to. I think that's the mistake I made in the beginning. Was I got to that stage where, like you say, you're just moving paint around on the panel and just making it go from bad to worse because you're just creaming up everything and making everything muddy. So I sort of realised I need to start off with less paint on the brush, blocking the shapes, and then only put on thick paint when I know that's where it's going to go, and then that's it, no more on that area. And I did go over areas again, but it's inevitable, you just do it. But in an ideal world, that's what you want to be doing, is which is why, again, start with an accurate drawing. Not so much important with this, but when you put your shape in, put it there, and then aim not to do anything with it, other than perhaps painting one shape into it, making a little modification, because it's all that fiddling that we've got the right darkness there, but as soon as I fiddle there and there, it's no longer the right darkness, and that's no longer the right lightness. So it's messing about is the tricky bit. Yeah, definitely that I struggled on this one when I started messing about with the rock after the sky, that I started to lose the shape of the rock, that the dark was going because I was pulling the white paint from the sky into the dark, and like you say, you lose your dark. And I find that's what happens with me when I'm painting, and it's probably the same for everyone, that you lose areas, you then got to get them back. And I suppose if you really think about what you're doing, which I suppose doing these demos has kind of helped me, particularly if I'm doing it live, that I don't want to make a fool of myself and mess up the painting, that I have to really think about what I'm doing, that I can't just go, oh, that will be that'll do, that'll be all right, oh, it'll be all right, I'll fix it in a minute. You can't do that. I've done that before, where I've started, I've done the drawing and the drawing doesn't look quite right, and I think, well, I'll sort it out in the painting, it'll be fine. And it never works. That's once because you're putting the paint in the wrong place, and then you're constantly trying to fix things, and the more you're fixing, the more you're muddying up, the more you're losing your drawing. That's why I've really struggled with portraits. I start with an accurate drawing, but then I've perhaps just made a slight mistake on the eye. Now I just fix it a little bit, and then the eye's going further and further and further up the head, and all of a sudden, it's all over the place. We've got a little bit of a leeway on portraits, but yeah, it's it's a case you've really got to think about what you're doing, you know, and don't put that brush to that canvas unless it's the right color and the right tonal value. More importantly, the right tonal value. And you know, are you putting it in the right place? So it's, I suppose, like a workman, a woodworkman. You know, you measure twice, cut once. You know, check twice, and put it, you know, once. You know, that's a good method. We've all done that. Cut a piece of wood, offered it up. Ah! So hopefully you enjoyed that. Keep going. It's a wonderful medium to paint, and if you're struggling as a beginner, it's completely normal. It will get easier. It's always interesting, and there's always something new to learn. So do hit that like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.